You're now listening to the Inside BBL Show with your hosts, Brain and Horse.
G'day, guys. Welcome back. You're watching the Inside BBL Show on the SC Brain and joined by the Supercoach Horse, mate. How are you going?
Going well, thank you, mate. Fresh off the back of watching some domestic cricket today, seeing South Australia knock over New South Wales fairly easily. Jack Edwards, top scoring for New South Wales in the 50 overs and bowling first change, the things you love to see.
Yes, let's hope that continues into the BBL. Obviously, a big talking point there for the Sixers that we'll touch on when we do their team preview. But yeah, it's good to see domestic cricket back on the TV. Lots of guys that are at this time of the year fighting it out to really kind of put their hands up for their BBL squads this year.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at players that are in form, potential cheapies. We saw Mackenzie Harvey only last week knock out 140 today. He only made one off two rocks. We've said it before, it just takes one good rock, and he got one today. And that's it for your day. So that's why our heavy emphasis is on all-rounders in BBL 14.
And there is some talking points from the Australia versus Pakistan series that we've just seen go by, where Australia got knocked off pretty convincingly by Pakistan, specifically Harris Rauf, just giving all of our batsmen nightmares. It's a shame we won't see him for the Stars this year. But speaking of, one of the greatest segues of all time, we are talking about the Melbourne Stars today, the most relevant BBL team this year, considering they've got the best first three rounds in the competition, Horse. They've got a double, single, double. So there is a lot to talk about with these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And the name at the top of the list, Glenn Maxwell, he's one that at 247K, you usually go, nah, with the scores that he's made recently, but he just needs one out of the middle of the bat and away he goes. And it's a dangerous fade if you want to play that game with a double first up.
I don't know whether I can do it. I think obviously for us doing a podcast, talking publicly about what we're going to be doing each week, we're judged on our ranking pretty consistently. All podcasters are. You know, the first question we get is, what's your ranking? And I think in our position, Glenn Maxwell can't be a fade. But I tell you what, if you want to go for the ultimate prize of first overall in BBL Supercoach, you probably, if Glenn Maxwell and guys like Matt Short kind of don't start as they should, I can guarantee the winner this year will be someone who faded both of them if it ends up working out that way. But yeah, it's a big risk. It's a very large risk. And we'll talk about Maxi and a few of these other guys very soon. But guys, before we do, hit like and subscribe. We'd appreciate it if you support the show so that you get those little ding, the little bell that comes through every time that we come live. We'll drop an episode. And for those of you listening on audio, hit that follow button and leave us a 5-star review if you like the content. We've also got an unlimited league, as we do every single year, where we give out weekly prizes, thanks to the standard squeeze, and a Supercoach Champions ring thanks to SC Rings. And the code there is on the screen. 650202 is the code there. 650202 for you audio listeners to join for free and take on the community and hopefully win some stuff. That would be fantastic. And Horse, we're here to dive into the Melbourne Stars and the team preview, but we have already done plenty of write-ups and you know, a lot of content inside the Patreon where you get exclusive access to us. You can ask us questions. You can get us to rate your team. And we've got a lot of content coming for the year. So check out how you can join here.
Want to take your Supercoach game to the next level? Inside Fantasy Sports are bringing you exclusive content all year round, such as weekly expert Q&As, team, trade, and captaincy advice, statistical deep dives, priority podcast questions, and tons more. So what are you waiting for? Get full access to the experts. Go to patreon.com/Insight Fantasy Sports and subscribe to Insight Unlimited today.
And the link is in the description below there. So, all right, let's rip into the ins and outs for the Melbourne Stars, mate. What's there's a bit going on for the Melbourne Stars. Who's coming in?
There's a bit. So the two Poms at the top headlining the ins for the Stars, Tom Curran and Ben Duckett. We've seen the way Ben Duckett can accelerate, especially with the Pommy international sides, whether it be Test cricket or one-day cricket. Tom Curran, perhaps one of the better T20 players that we've got here in Australia for this tournament, and has scored very well in the past. Hamish McKenzie, an underrated pickup from the Perth Scourgers, and young Dougie Warren fill out the ins. The outs, there's a few big ones, mate. Dan Lawrence, the Pommy, he's out. Harris Barelf, we saw what he did to the Australians. He's out. Was him? He's gone. Nick Larkin, not retained. Nathan Cooten-Nile, he was good for a long time, but he's pulled the pin. Liam Dawson and Ollie Stone are no longer with the Stars.
The big, obviously, the big talking points are Tom Curran, Ben Duckett, how they fit into this squad. And it is unfortunate, but we won't have Ben Duckett for their round one double. So it kind of wipes him out of the picture, but it also brings another guy back into the picture that I really hate talking about. But we're going to be talking about him a little bit later on because he burnt us hard last year, Horse. Was not fun. Dan Lawrence was also good for them last year. It's a kind of a shame that we're not going to see him this year because he was quite good and he came on quite quickly, didn't he? He didn't really take too much time to adjust.
No, with his batting, he was consistent with the bat, and even his left arm wrong'uns that he was bowling, the Chinamans or whatever you call it. Like, he took a few wickets and was actually quite good with the ball as well.
As if they didn't already need more bowling options, but he gave them that. So yeah, he was good. He was fantastic. Our predicted 11 for round one, you'll see it on the screen here. Now, obviously, the big omission here is, like we mentioned, Ben Duckett, but we've got Tom Rogers opening up the top. He's actually been batting in the middle order for Victoria. He's been batting around 4-5. So I think we still see him open here just through lack of options personally. But then we've got Sam Harper, Horse. Tell me, he should take the gloves. I think he's probably the only logical option aside from Hilton Cartwright, who could also wicket keep. But I think that Harper's probably done enough to be able to retain that at least for round one to give them a reliable source up the top of the, or should I say reliable, semi-reliable source of runs at the top of the order.
For those of you that watch the AFL podcast here on the Inside Fantasy Sports Network, Matt Crouch is a name that I swear that I very rarely say. Sam Harper is in that same basket because he has burnt us so many times, but yet round one without Ben Duckett, I fear that he's our keeper for the first double, and I'm nearly not wanting to, but nearly fear of missing out if I don't have Sam Harper and the price increase that he may generate out of being the keeper for the first two games.
Yeah, for me, look, we'll come back to him because we're going to talk about him a little bit later, but I think there is logic there to pick Harper in round one, and then hopefully he either turns into enough for you where you can use him for your VC loop or your emergency loop, or you find a way to get him out because you're going to have to prioritise moving him on so you can make cash elsewhere. So that's how we see them opening up. Now, obviously, the next three are pretty locked in. We've got Bo Webster at 3, Glenn Maxwell at 4, Marcus Stoinis at 5. Now, Glenn Maxwell obviously has relinquished the captaincy as far as I'm aware. That was announced at the end of last season. So I'm very interested to see. I haven't seen it come out, but I'm interested to see who they go with as the captain. I would not be surprised if Bo Webster ends up being the captain of this squad, but we'll see how that works out, mate. 3, 4, 5 look pretty solid. Hilton Cartwright at 6. That goes unchanged from last year. I don't see that changing again. But the big change coming in, mate, is Tom Curran at 7. The ultimate role. You can't get better than this. A guy that's going to bowl death, he's going to bat 7. I don't know whether there's any other options out there that are going to bowl bat in the top 7 and bowl death and have the role he has.
Apart from Jack Edwards, no. I think he's the man. So Tom Curran, he should be one of the first picked in your BBL 14 sides for Supercoach this year.
Absolutely. We've got Asam Amir here he comes in at 8. He's missed selection for Pakistan, so it looks like at this stage he could be playing round one, which is great and definitely an option. Joel Paris at 9, who was a bit of a stalwart in the fast bowling stocks for them. I've got Hamish McKenzie at 10. Now, going in with 2 wrist spinners obviously isn't usually the in thing unless you're at the Adelaide Strikers, but I do see him potentially getting a role. Maybe if it's not game 1, I should say, in round 1, it might be game 2 at the MCG where maybe the conditions would favour him a little bit more. And then we've got Mark Steckety, the bowling machine, at number 11, who I won't be touching with the 10-foot pole. Do you agree, disagree? Is there anybody here that I'm missing that probably could slot into this lineup, Horse?
I'm not overly sure on Hamish McKenzie. If you want to bring that team back up, Braino.
Yeah, sorry.
We see there that we've got Bo Webster who can bowl at 3, Glenn Maxwell who bowls at 4, Stoinis who can bowl at 5, Hilton Cartwright, if he's not keeping, he's known to roll the arm over as well. He can do it as well. And then you got Curran, Mir, Paris and Steckety. They have got 7 or 8 players that can roll the arm over and not just be the part-time, try and get through and over. anyone on their any given day could bowl their 2, 3, even 4 overs if they are either economical or picking up wickets. So to pick a lone bowler or a bowler alone in this lineup, I think you're playing with fire a little bit.
Yeah, look, you could strengthen the batting there a little bit. We've got Brodie Couch, who seems to do a good job with bat and ball in hand. It'll be interesting to see how they play that. They've just got so many all-rounders that they genuinely need one more kind of out-and-out quick, don't they? Steckany and Paris don't fill me with a ton of confidence, and it looks like they're going to have to use Bo Webster's medium paces, potentially even Marcus Stoinis, to get through their overs. So quite kind of light in the bowling stocks for Stars, which seems to go with the theme of every other season, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does a little bit. Bo Webster, like, he can bowl you 130 Ks. He's not by any means of the term fast, but he can bowl his little wobblers, his little medium paces, and that's the same with Marcus Stoinis. So maybe they're going to be utilised a little more this year.
For sure. Guys, the show tonight, of course, is brought to you by The Standard Squeeze, helping you drink responsibly and conveniently. You can go to their website, thestandardsqueeze.com. Use the code IFS15. You can get 15% off everything in store thanks to The Standard Squeeze for supporting the show. Now, let's move into the guns, mate. We've got Glenn Maxwell at the top, 247K. There's not much to say. He's been in poor form for Australia. He hasn't really been in the runs at all recently. But for me, I think, personally, I think it's too much of a risk to fade him. I think I'd rather fade another couple of big gun players than Maxwell, just with the schedule. I think if Maxi was on a single, I'd be more than happy to kind of move in a different direction. But the fact that he's got 5 games in 3 rounds, I think he's just a guy you need to have to start.
Oh, you're spot on, mate. We talk about Maxi and the way that he can just accelerate at the drop of a hat. The last 2 games don't fill me full of confidence against Perth. He's only scored a 5 and an 8, but we know that he can just pop off. He needs one out of the middle of the bat. A hard, bouncy, Optus oval wicket will play right into his hands. And with the way that he bowls as well, he doesn't rely on his turn to get wickets or to be economical. He just knows where to put it, and he's good with his field placing. I'm really interested in the second game against Brisbane, though. The last 2 times he's got an average of 100 against Brisbane in his last 2 games.
Good stats there. Yeah, very favourable. And again, we've got to look at both matchups. We can't just look at one. And, everybody would struggle against Perth. I think if you go and have a look at previous scores for most players, you wouldn't see many favourable matchups against Perth. But, yeah, that's at the MCG as well. Glenn Maxwell, no captaincy, will probably lift a bit of weight off his shoulders. He can just go out and play. Yeah, definitely top of the list for a good reason. Now, Tom Curran, mate, we've already talked about him. 152K comes in at import price. I think he's a better option than Glenn Maxwell, personally. And I know that's saying a lot considering how good Glenn Maxwell is, but the role when you can get a death bowler batting top 7, he'll field in decent spots too. He's got decent hands. I just want that junk in the 19th and 20th over coming my way where he goes and gets 3 for 7 or something. That's where you get your points.
100%. The last 2 games against Perth Scorchers as well, he averages 106 Supercoach points per game. He scored an 113 and a 99 in his last 2. The last 113 was actually at Optus Stadium as well. So he has scored well there recently.
It's tough. We've got so many fantastic options. The third one being Bo Webster, 164K. Who can forget the pod of the year from Mr. Langley himself, coming off the back-to-back wins in BBL Supercoach, and he went against Maxwell as a captain and took Bo Webster when Bo Webster got 212 last year, which was just outstanding. So he's a guy that can be in. He's going to be bowling. He's going to be batting at 3. I don't see that changing. I think he's also another guy you're going to want in your team.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. With the way that he's looked in the India A series, yeah, he didn't get a lot of runs, but he looked fairly solid with the bat. That wicket was tricky to play on. At Shield level and at ODI level here in Australia, he has been making runs. He has been taking wickets. The last one-dayer that he played against Perth, he took 6 for 17 as well. So he has got form on the board with the ball, not just the bat.
And it's good to see that he's getting a role for Victoria as well. He's bowling some pretty meaningful overs for Victoria at the moment. So he's definitely not someone who for Tassie, sorry. He's definitely not someone who doesn't bowl at state level, but then just comes in and randomly bowls some overs for the Stars. He's got a role in every team that he plays for, so that's positive. Mate, they're the guns. They're the guys that you probably can't go without to start. But we're hunting value, aren't we, to start the year? Because you can't just fill up your team with full of guns. Who do you think is at value at the moment that you can probably grab at a cheaper price?
There's two that I've picked out for this side. Tom Rogers at 87K, opening the batting. I feel like he's one or two scores away from really having a good, solid season here in the BBL. He gets to his 20-25 fairly consistency, but fails to go on with it. I feel like this may be a year where he does this. And then you've got Marcus Stoinis at 84K as well. I would prefer, I know this sounds bad, but I would prefer Rogers over Stoinis, even though I know Stoinis is a much better bowler. But it's the role of Stoinis that scares me. Is he going to bat at 5 or 6 and not bowl? Or, like, if he goes back to 3 years ago when he was opening, he's one of the first picked in my side. But batting that low and not bowling it hurts.
It's tough, isn't it, how you can see such a fall from grace from one of the best BBL Supercoach players there ever was to the role that he has now. Batting at 5, bowling 2 overs isn't it for me. And I know that he's at 84K, and the price is incredibly tempting, but he's at 84K for a reason, because he's priced on his average last year. And when you think about that, it's just insane. But he just wasn't getting the overs, and obviously he's just not getting enough overs. He's not facing enough overs in the middle either. So he was thrown into positions last year where he was coming in at 3 for 20. The Stars were poor. We need to remember that as well. They're definitely not considered a good team. So if we're seeing the Stars batting first a lot, and they're not putting up targets, it could be a challenge for pretty much everyone in this team.
100%. I've got a question for you, because to me, like, I haven't played at the level that you have before. You've obviously played some Australia A, done some tours overseas and what have you. You've got Marcus Stoinis, who opens the bowling for Australia in a one-dayer, but yet can't get a bowl in a domestic T20 side. What would be the reasoning behind that?
Look, ODIs and one-day matches versus T20 matches are very different. It could be very matchup based as well. Obviously, they identified something with Pakistan maybe that suited Marcus Stoinis in the way that he bowls, and he does get the ball through. He doesn't bowl slow. He'll bowl 130 odd plus. So maybe they were hoping that Marcus Stoinis is bowling. He does bowl into the wicket a lot. His change-ups are great. He does roll his wrists on the ball a little bit, so he does jag off the wicket a fair bit. So maybe they just were hoping if the wicket was a bit sticky or a bit slow, that one would get stuck in the wicket and they'd be able to take a couple of cheap, quick ones. But again, it's tactical, it's matchup based, and I think we won't see too much more of that. But in saying that, it's hard because, and Marcus Stoinis is that enigma, that player. We don't know what the Stars are going to do with him. They could get halfway through the year and go, yeah, you know what, Marcus Stoinis back up to open, thanks a lot. And he bowls 3 overs and opens the batting again, and the role completely changes because he's that kind of player that can fit into so many different spots. But I think they value him as a finisher of the innings way more than they do a starter of the innings now at this part of his career.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
Tricky one, but it's so cheap. So 100%, you'd absolutely be silly not to at least consider him. He is currently the most owned player in Supercoach right now. And I understand why. I don't have him in my team right now. That's where I'll leave it. Cheapies, mate, few options. Sam Harper, we talked about him at the start, 58K wicketkeeper. We've given our logic on him. We'll move past him. Joel Paris, 72K. Now, Joel Paris is one of those ones I'm not overly convinced on. He's in the range of cheapie, but not exactly basement price. But the positives for Joel Paris are that he opened the bowling in every game that he played. He bowled the first over, and he bowled the death overs, either the 19th or the 20th over, every single game bar one that he played last year. Yeah. So the role is there with ball in hand. Is he good enough to utilize that role? Well, he's priced at 72K. So that tells you that maybe, well, it's a bit of fool's gold.
Mm-hmm. Great start that you brought up there. But again, you're right. He bowled death in all but one game, and he's still at 72K.
Yeah. Look, if you're expecting him to get miraculously a ton better, he's on the early side of 30 from memories around my age, I think. So obviously as a quick bowler, once you pass 30, 31, 32, it starts to get quite challenging. So, he's had his fair share of injury troubles over the years as well. So it's just one of those ones I'll probably let through to the keeper for now. I feel like we're hunting for a Stars bowler and then just not putting their hand up at the moment for us. But Hamish McKenzie could be that guy if he does get the role. Because at 69K, he showed us what he did in Perth, and I think it was in round 1 or round 2 when Perth had that double. He went and scored incredibly well, made a lot of cash last year. If he gets an opportunity here, I'll probably start with him if he gets named in game 1.
One massive word that you just said, and that's if. If Hamish McKenzie is picked for the first game against Perth on that bouncy wicket, then he's in. If he's not, then you've got to consider this, is that you're going to be playing Hamish McKenzie potentially on a single game week when they return to the MCG, where they're playing on perhaps the biggest boundaries in Australia and more suited to a leg spinner. So we've got to be careful, and we've got to keep our eye on practice matches and how the Stars are looking to set their team.
And look, injuries pop up. We've got 30 odd days to the season starts. Injuries come from everywhere. So again, Osama Mir, who is 124K at the moment, and it looks like he will be suiting up in round 1's double. A bit expensive for me, but if he isn't named, I think Hamish McKenzie's a lock. If he can't get over here, or the no objection certificate from Pakistan isn't on it, or whatever, if there's a reason that Osama Mir doesn't line up in round 1, Hamish McKenzie will be in, and he'll be in my team.
Hold on, mate. Yeah.
But would you consider Osama Mir? Is he a guy that you'd look at?
He needs to get here first. You're right. He needs to get clearance from Pakistan, come over here, bowl a little bit first, and then again with practice matches. If he's bowling well, he's using the wickets well here, getting his turn, then I will consider him, yes, especially given that they go double, single, double. The best 3-game run to start BBL 14.
Mate, who are we fading? Who are we leaving out? These two are pretty obvious, but just in case people haven't been on top of the news, who are we off?
Yep, so there's 2 that I'm going to bring up, and that's Ben Duckett, 152K. He will be on international duty, so he won't be here until round 2, so he misses the early double. The second player is Scott Boland at 84K. Yes, that's cheap for a Test cricketer, but he's in the Test squad. He's been named as the backup bowler in the 13 alongside Josh Inglis, who's the backup batsman. He will not be playing early on.
And I think if they do release Scott Boland, which I think it's rare, but if they do release him from that Test squad, and again, we've got to make it to the 3rd Test here. We're only looking at the first Test squad here. Things can change between now and Test 3. But if he's still in that Test squad in Test 3, in Match 3, the only person I can see him replacing would be the McKenzie or the second spinner, or potentially Mark Steckety, who was in and out of the team last year. I'm not a big Mark Steckety fan. I think he's probably the first guy that drops out of this team from a bowling perspective. He would replace him, but I just don't see Scott Boland Scott Boland's had times where he was left out of this team purely when he was available, just because naturally he's a great Test bowler, but not exactly the best one-day or T20 bowler.
You're right. He's a line and length bowler.
Yeah, for sure. Mate, obviously we try and keep these under 20 minutes. We didn't do that this time because there's so much to talk about with the Melbourne Stars. But look, a lot's going to change. You can jump in the Patreon. We always update you on there on any news that comes through on any of these players, any roles that are going to be changing in the preseason. There's still lots of time left, but you can get your teams rated in there. So jump on in there. The link's in the description below. But plenty more team previews coming your way. I think who have we got next? We've got the Perth Scorchers coming up next.
Perth Scorchers next, yep.
That's going to be a beauty. So stay tuned, hit subscribe and like, support the show, follow, review, do all those things, and we'll see you for the Scorchers preview next. Catch you later.